Good morning, everybody. I'm just waiting for everybody to join. I hope everybody's well today and that you all enjoyed a long weekend if you got one. Good morning, Olivia. Nice to see everybody today. I'm feeling really good, actually. I've done my yoga practice this morning, so I'm feeling on top of the world. Good morning, Simona. Nice to see you. I hope you had a lovely long weekend too. Just give everybody a chance to connect. Again, if anybody's got any questions that they want to pop into the question section in the control panel, please do. If there's anything that you're wanting to query or anything that you've read about that you're curious about, just pop it in the chat box. And just a reminder that next Wednesday in session 10, we will be doing a Q&A session. And we will be polling everybody on Monday to see if there are any particular questions about the, going away and travelling. Olivia, very good question. Just check with Laura and Beth in the office. They're the ones who do all the admin and the sort of the certification and what have you. Georgina, wondering where are the best places to teach without a degree? That's a very good question. There are lots of places in the world that are happy to have you without a degree. I would always say the best thing to do is to check the visa qualifications, and also depending on the type of travelling you're doing. So quite often places like Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, they're often very happy just with the fact that you're a proficient English speaker. Places like Europe, actually, I have a very dear friend who is a fantastic teacher, and she taught in Spain for many years with no degree. So there are lots of countries. Countries like Singapore are a little bit more, are a lot stricter. And they require a first degree as well as a teaching qualification, and it doesn't matter what your first degree is in. So I have friends who've got degrees in chemistry and they're teaching. So I would always check the visa situation of the country, and just check perhaps with the organisations that you're thinking about working with as well. And we'll have a little talk about that on Wednesday too. But that's a good question. But yeah, there are lots of places you can teach without a degree. You're most welcome, Georgina. Olivia, I'm not sure if I was clear there. I'm so sorry. I was answering two questions at the same time. I do apologise. But yes, if you want to check about certificates, just mail Beth or Laura in the main office, because they're the ones that deal with all the admin side. Lovely. Good. So I'll just wait a couple of moments just to let everybody join. As I said, if anybody's got any other questions, please feel free to ask. In the meantime, I hope everybody's well and enjoying the sunshine. It's hard to believe we're in the UK, isn't it? I've got a very dear Spanish friend who lives very close to me. And she's been amazed with the weather in the UK. I told her to go back and tell everybody in Spain that it doesn't always rain over here. So it looks like we're I think we're just about ready to get going. That's great. So Yes, Olivia, next Wednesday is the last session. So just a reminder to everybody, we're doing today, we're doing Friday, because obviously Monday was the bank holiday, so we need to recover that session. And then we're doing next Monday and next Wednesday. And as I said, next Wednesday will be a Q&A session. I've got a little bit of information to share with you in terms of looking for work and things to think about when you're traveling. But it's very much an opportunity for you to ask me anything as well. So think about the questions that you really want me to help you with. You may remember me saying at the very beginning of the sessions that I've lived and worked in many places around the world. Apart from South America, but I do have some knowledge of South America because I do have quite a few friends who've lived and worked over there. So I will do my best to answer any questions that you've got for me. Okay, so have a think over the next week about anything that you want to ask me about, and I'm really happy to do that next week. So a very good morning, a very warm welcome to everybody, and when I say warm, I mean literally and figuratively. I don't know about you, but I've got a beautiful sunny day where I'm sat, and it's nice to be doing a webinar in a t-shirt. So I hope you all had a lovely weekend, and welcome to today's session, which is all about using authentic materials. Now, you may remember that from the previous session we were looking at how you saw with your materials, so supplementing, omitting, adapting and replacing. We looked a little bit as well about where you find materials last week, so thinking about textbooks, and you may remember that I said wait for the next session when we're talking about using perhaps other places that you can look for your materials. So not using a textbook, not using prepared lessons. Today we're going to be looking at other ways that we can run our lessons. So today's outcomes. We're going to have a think about, first of all, what is authentic. We're going to have a look at some of the possibilities. So where can we find these authentic materials? And I'm going to give you some practical techniques to do it. And we're going to look at a range of levels as well. And I've got some suggestions for teaching young learners right through to teaching sort of high-level adults, because depending on where you find yourself in the world, you could be teaching a real range of ages and levels. So it's important to have a think about how we can adapt and attend to all our students. So my first question to you is, what is authentic? So when I say authentic materials, what do you understand by that? So answers in the questions box for me. When I say authentic, what do you think? Real material, says Olivia, not from the textbook, says Safia. Yes, good. Realia, okay, yes, that could be an authentic material, couldn't it? Original, from the teacher, says Simona. Some materials are the same materials used by people who speak English, says Georgina. That's nice. YouTube, says Olivia. Materials that are original and homemade, says Monty. Materials that are not plagiarised and standardised. Oh my goodness, the plagiarism. Yes, absolutely. Do be so careful with that. Newspaper articles, cultural videos. Lovely. You've all got some fabulous ideas. Now, I should say at this point that after 20 something years in the industry, there is still a lot of debate about what actually authentic means. You've all got really great ideas, and some people argue, for example, if I've recorded something with a friend of mine for one of my students, the fact that we're both English speakers means that it's authentic. Other people would argue, yes, but you've recorded it especially for a student and you've graded your language, so is that authentic? I'm not going to enter into the whys and wherefores, but for the purposes of today's session, this is my definition, okay? So we're going to consider authentic as being something produced for a purpose other than teaching English as a foreign language. So we're going to look at materials, as you quite rightly said, things like YouTube videos, materials that perhaps English speakers use themselves. Okay, so something, how can we adapt things that have been produced for another purpose for our lessons. And the reason we do that is because it's incredibly motivating. Students really enjoy the power of being able to deal with, process and enjoy something that hasn't just been produced for an EFL lesson. So it really gives them courage, which I think is very important. So some of the possibilities. Now, a number of you mentioned things like newspaper articles, videos, things like that. We've got lots of possibilities here. In case you're wondering, the photo is from the Take That concert in Glasgow from a couple of years ago. It was my the photo that I thought represented music best. So I've got songs, and songs are brilliant because they work with all ages depending on the song that you've chosen. Poetry. Simon, I don't know if you're on the call today, but if you are, you asked me about poetry, I think a couple of weeks ago, so absolutely you can use poetry. Books, you can use fiction and non-fiction books, and I use books a lot in my classroom actually, particularly when I've got a long course. I feed fiction quite often into my lessons. That's mainly because I'm a great advocate of reading, so I like to introduce it into my classes. Newspapers. Now, I will say something about newspapers here, and that is if you're using UK-based newspapers, just be a little bit careful of the newspaper that you choose. Now, what I mean by that is that your broadsheets, so your things like the Sun, the Express, the Mirror, those sorts of newspapers, they tend to use quite archaic language and turn it into lots of puns, lots of plays on words, and it can be incredibly complicated to use with students. So I would strongly advise only using those sorts of newspapers for very high levels, and perhaps people who are going to find themselves coming to the UK or the US where they really need to understand the culture. Newspapers that tend to work better for our students are, if you like, more serious press, so things like The Guardian, The Telegraph, The Times, and also the BBC. The BBC is fantastic in that sense because the length of the paragraph, the length of the sentences, it's written in a way that really is very user-friendly. So just be aware of newspapers for your students. Magazines and journals are another great source. Magazines are fantastic, and I have a little confession to make here. When I moved to Spain many years ago, my Spanish was absolutely diabolical, and one of the ways I practiced not only my Spanish, but I got sort of an understanding of the culture was by reading Hola magazine. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Hola, it's the Spanish equivalent of hello. And one of the reasons it's brilliant is because the pictures are very vivid. The pictures are normally fantastic and they're very descriptive. So quite often it talks about the fashion. So if you want to help people understand sort of clothing, for example, something like Hola is brilliant, or hello in English. And there is my confession for the day. Social media. Oh, absolutely fabulous. It's opened up another avenue of authentic materials. I use this all the time now in my classes. Websites, obviously, TV programs are fantastic. Again, a little bit like films, you can sort of dot them into your classes. Online videos and many more besides. Okay, so those are some of the things that we can use and we can bring into our classroom. So I want to start off today by showing you what I do with TED Talks. TED Talks are a fabulous source of material, mainly because the maximum length is 20 minutes. Speakers have been coached, so everything that comes out of their mouth adds value to the presentation. So they're good for teaching presentation skills. So if you've got a class that perhaps have got to do with presentation, they're wonderful. They're fabulous from a language point of view because the language is always beautiful. And they're fabulous from a content point of view, as we'll see. I've got 2 examples for you this morning. And one of the other lovely things about TED Talks is that they do have a script. So you can use the script with your students to give them a little bit of a scaffold, to give them a little bit of help if need be. TED Talks generally work best for higher levels, so I would always say from sort of a B2 upwards are probably your more natural audience for TED Talks. Okay, so this is one of my favourite TED Talks. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this lovely lady. This is Amy Cuddy, huge fan of Amy Cuddy. So the warm I do with my students, so what makes you feel nervous? How do you feel? What are you thinking? And what do you do? What's your reaction? So answers in the question box for me this morning. What makes you feel nervous? Oh, you've all gone quiet on me. Public speaking, says Georgina. I think that's one that makes a lot of people nervous, my darling, yes. Yes, if you don't know the context of the people, so when you feel like you've been sort of caught unprepared, absolutely. That's a good one. In unknown outcomes or circumstances, absolutely. Exams make people, oh, Simon, feeling like a fraud. That's imposter syndrome, my darling. Yes. Having difficult conversations with friends. Oh, Safia, that's a goodie, yes. I do quite a lot of workshops on imposter syndrome and difficult conversations. It's 2 of my favourite subjects to train on. Absolutely. Simon will have a talk about that in another moment, but oh, I'm so with you, yes. And it's a really important thing to do, particularly among academics and sort of very, very high-flying professionals. Being judged. Oh, Simona, yeah. Oh, Simon, you've done some workshops too. Fabulous. We need to have a chat. So this is a really good way of warming the students up. And one of the reasons that this works very well is because you'll see the topic, you may remember this from the very beginning, is that you're talking about yourself. When you're talking about yourself, it's much easier to be authentic. It's much easier to think about, you know, the language. You're talking from personal experience. So that's really important. Then I might pre-teach any useful vocabulary. So I've got the script of the TED Talk, so I might just have a look through and I might just pick out any vocabulary that I think, oh, that might cause my students some problems. So I'm going to pre-teach that to them, just like you would on a normal listening lesson. And then this is the wonderful, this is a photo of Amy, by the way. Amy Cuddy's talk on body shapes. Now, I don't know if anybody's seen this, but it is fabulous. And then once we've done that, we have a look and I just ask, you know, do you think Amy looked nervous? How can you tell? And she does, and there are some physical signs that she's nervous. Then I might watch, then I will watch it again, and this time I've given them more detailed comprehension questions. So you remember, on the first time you do a listening, we do something like a gist. So just looking for a sort of an overall theme to the talk. And in this case, as I said, does she look nervous? How can you tell? And then we do some more detailed comprehension questions. And you can pre-do these because you've got the script. TED gives you the script. And then after we've had a go through the comprehension questions and we've had a bit of a talk, I actually get them to power pose in class. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Amy Cuddy, her thing is that body shapes the way you feel. So, for example, you'll see her there, she's doing the Wonder Woman pose. And when we stand up straight and we make ourselves big, and I get them to power pose in class and we go around power posing like this, you'll find that your the idea is that your testosterone goes up and your cortisol goes down, and you feel a lot less nervous. When you go small like that and you hunch yourself in, it's the opposite. So your cortisol goes up and your testosterone goes down, and it's much harder to feel confident. So for those of you who said public speaking or an exam or a job interview, anything like that, try a little bit of power posing. Now, I don't feel that you have to walk up and down the corridor like this. You can if you feel very confident, but you can go into the toilets and you can just do a bit of power posing and make sure that you're standing up straight. And when you go into your interview, you're sitting up tall, and all your sort of hormones will be in the right place. It's a really good thing to do. Now, people love this. Oh gosh, yes, Safia, I always use non-British stuff as well. So Amy is American, because in this day and age, we're talking, people work globally. So even though I'm sitting in the UK, I do a lot of webinars with people from Africa, people from South America. I work with people in Asia. So yes, absolutely. And they're used to different types of English. So if you go into, for example, Singapore, where I used to live, they're used to having American, Australian, Canadian, South African teachers. So me always using British wouldn't be, you know, it's not really realistic these days. So have a go at power posing. If you haven't seen this video, I strongly recommend it. It's such a useful thing just to do for your own sort of your own self. Another really great TED talk to use. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this one. This is the wonderful Tim Urban. Do you ever procrastinate? So go on, be honest, people. What tasks do you normally leave until last? And in the spirit of full disclosure, while you answer that question, mine tends to be anything to do with accounts, paperwork, you know, anything where I have to file something. Yes, all the time. Oh, professional procrastinators, marvellous. Yes, homework, lovely. Good, we could all get a gold medal in procrastinating. Anybody else want to admit any kind of schoolwork? Yes. I'm not going to read that one out, Simon, but yes. Oh, even going to bed. Yes, oh, that's a good one. Stats. Monty, my mother is a mathematician, and that statistics is her worst subject. She won't go near it. Oh, I know. So sympathise, my darling. So sympathise. Good. So we've all admitted. Well done, everybody. Okay. So this is a really good talk for you guys. Again, pre-teach any useful vocabulary. So anything that you think is important in the language that they might not understand. Then watch Tim Urban's talk. And the first question that I always ask people is, what are his cartoon characters called? Now, these are his cartoon characters over here in the photo. So this is a chap called the Panic Monster, and this is the instant gratification monkey. Okay, I can strongly recommend this. Every time I watch it, I have a laugh, and then I go, oh my God, that's me. Watch again, and again, you can see it always follows the same sort of template. More detailed comprehension questions, and then the last one's really great, and this is something that I would strongly recommend you do together with your class, actually. So you can make a weekly calendar for the next 12 months, and then once you've watched the talk, you'll know what I'm talking about, and you can put in what your priorities are. So how are you going to spend the next 12 months? What do you want to accomplish? What do you think is important? And you can pair and share, and then you can move around. It is such a fun lesson because, again, people are talking about themselves and things that are important to themselves. So this works really, really well. So using poetry. Olivia, sorry, you couldn't hear anything. Are you quite sure? Have you got a If you're having a problem with the sound, try coming out and coming back in again. I think everybody else is okay, but do let me know if anybody else has a problem with the sound. It dropped. Okay. So, Simon, you were asking about poetry. Absolutely, I use poetry all the time. So I use acrostics. So for those of you who are not familiar with acrostics, it might be, for example, my name. So the first line starts with an A, the second line starts with an N, third line starts with an N, the last line starts with an A. And you can just do simple words, so simple adjectives or simple nouns. That describe you. So I might have, for example, Anna might be, I don't know, architecture. The other A would be Andalusia, and the two N's might be, what could I do? Natation, because I like French and I like swimming. And the third N could be never give up. Which is a good motto to have. So just something about yourself can be great fun, and you can make it sort of easy, so just simple words for lower levels, or you can make it sort of whole sentences for higher levels. Now, this works really well as a getting to know you activity and as a warmer. And again, in the spirit of full disclosure, I once taught at Changi Prison. And I was teaching some male inmates, and I was told that I wasn't allowed to discuss certain subjects, and I was really struggling for what to do with a warmer, because obviously you can't do what did you do at the weekend, find something you have in common, things like that. And I was racking my brains, and eventually I thought, oh, I know, we'll do acrostics, and it worked really well. So I can thoroughly recommend it as a getting to know your activity for prisoners. I do hope none of you are in the same situation. Haikus, great for syllable practice. So you remember we were talking about pronunciation. Haikus are great for syllable practice. So for those of you not familiar with haikus, the first line of a haiku has 5 syllables, correct me if I'm wrong here, then it's 7 and then 5. Okay, so it's a 3-line poem and it's all to do with syllables. Great for vocabulary review. What I often do with haikus is I put the wrong number of syllables in one of the lines. They have to discover it and they have to correct it. Great fun. Shape poems. Shape poems are where you literally just cut out the shape of something and you just put sort of adjectives or nouns or something around the edge. So if you've got butterfly, for example, you cut it out in a butterfly, and around the edge you might put wings, beautiful, fly, every sort of word that you can think of that relates to butterflies. So beautiful, and you can make gorgeous classroom displays out of it. Very simple, very easy, great for young learners, great for beginners, very sort of good for motor skills, good for sort of thinking about all the vocabulary that they know and they've practiced. And again, there are no real right or wrong answers, so you can let them sort of really imagine. Rhymes, so rhymes are fabulous. So nursery rhymes for kids, more adult poetry as you go up, the levels and the ages. Good for vowel practice, because obviously rhymes are when the vowel sounds are the same. So the cat sat on the mat, ah, ah, ah. Poemhunter.com is a wonderful website that's got loads and loads and loads of poems, all classified. It's all free. And what's lovely about it is they've recorded every poem, and you can see the poem underneath and you can hear the poem as well. And you can get students to try copying the poem so that they've got the intonation, the rhythm, the structure of the language. So it's fabulous for rhythm, because poetry is what gives is what really shows students the rhythm of English, which is gorgeous. A really lovely language in that sense. Simon, yes, it's poemhunter.com. So poemhunter, all one word.com. Absolutely fabulous, all free. I like free. Works better on the website than on the mobile. On the mobile, the page is a bit sort of squished and it's harder to navigate. But if you look at it on your website, it's much better. Lovely. So songs are really, really fabulous as well. So this is something that I've done with older students, and you'll see the first thing I do is a metaphor match. Now, if I've got a group of students who are multilingual, so they're from lots of different parts of the world, what I do is I get all their nationalities, I have a little Google, and I find metaphors from their own language, and I literally translate them into English. And I pop them up around the wall, and I give them a list of countries, or a list of the metaphors on a page, and the countries around the room they have to run, and they have to match the country and the metaphor. And of course, when you translate a metaphor, it causes a lot of hilarity. So if you think about things like the bee's knees in English, or dog's dinner, we have a lot of metaphors involving dogs. We won't go down that road, but you know what I mean. You know, it causes so much fun, and they share, and they're sort of like, what on earth does that mean? It's lovely. It's a really good way of getting everybody involved, and they have to identify the metaphor from their country and perhaps tell us how it sounds in the original. So it's a really good way of building rapport. Then we sort of talk about the problems of translating metaphors, so they can see right there and then that translating it directly into English is nonsensical. Then you'll see that I've got a sort of over here a metaphor and a meaning. Now these are actually in the correct columns, but you can mix them up so that they have to match them properly. So she gave him the cold shoulder, she ignored him. He breathed into the room, he came in confidently. He'd probably done Amy Cuddy's power posing. She stormed out of the room, she left the room angrily. Now you can see here that the metaphor involves a weather and an emotion. So weather and emotions often go together in English. And there is somebody at Leeds University who has spent her whole life doing research on metaphors and pairings. Then we clarify, obviously, the meaning, the prawn and the form, just like you would in a normal lesson. And then I'd use the song, and I might, again, pre-teach any important language, and all they have to do is fill in the blank with the correct metaphor. Now, there's a big picture clue there. Who is the artist? Who's going to be first? Oh, well done, Safia. Yeah, you get the prize there. Yeah, so this is an Adele song from her first album, and You Grace Me With Your Cold Shoulder. So we're practicing one of the metaphors, okay? And then we sort of make it a little bit personal at the end. So have you ever given anybody the cold shoulder? Why did you do it? What happened? So they share their experiences. And if they're happy to talk about it in the class, we do that as well. This works really well. I've done this lesson a couple of times and it's great fun. But you don't have to use songs with adults. So you can teach body parts, so you can point and say. So this is sort of using realia, really, isn't it? So head, shoulders, hands, fingers, elbow. So you've got a body, use it. Again, clarify the meaning, the prawn and the form. So again, like a normal vocabulary lesson, we follow the same features. And then we always play Anna Says. I'm sorry, Simon, but I don't play Simon Says. I play Anna Says. So touch your head, Anna Says, touch your shoulders, and we have great fun. And obviously you make it sort of faster and faster and faster, and sort of chaos generally ensues. And then we do the song, and they love it. Shoulders, knees and toes. There are loads of versions on internet, so if you don't feel very confident singing it, you'll be pleased to know on the web there are thousands of opportunities out there to play songs. If you want a really lovely one, you can watch My Littlies from Singapore doing heads, shoulders, knees and toes. In Google, if you type in British Council Singapore heads, shoulders, knees and toes, you'll see My Littlies in a very gorgeous video. So fun. And you can see, what happens when you speed it up or you miss bits out. It's fabulous. Using films and books is another really, really good way of bringing authentic materials into the classroom, bit of motivation. and also bringing some culture into the lesson, which is really nice too. So one of the ones I use is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So you can do this with any book and film pairing. So lots of books have been made into films, and it's a really good thing to sort of to use the two together. So you can watch the beginning of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and you can read the beginning of the book, and they can do a lovely compare and contrast. So what things were the same, what things were different. With films, you can use them as rewards as well. So, you know, if we get all our work done and we can use the last 5 minutes to watch a little bit more of the film. It's a great, great carrot. Similarly, with the book, you can use it as a settler. So we often have circle time, or we have everybody can sit comfortably wherever they like, and I read a little bit of the story to them. And they love having stories read to them. Kids really, really like this. Especially adults quite like having stories read to them. Think about audiobooks. And when we're doing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, we often do surveys. So we might sort of brainstorm some sweets or chocolates, and then we have to do a survey, and then we learn all about sort of we learn all about graphs, we learn all about pie charts, we learn about percentages, and it's a really fun thing to do because they've used data from their own classroom about a subject that they're interested in. One of the other fun things to do is to introduce another child into the Chocolate Factory tour. So how do they behave? So you may remember from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that Charlie is the only well-behaved child in there. The others are diabolical. So you can add in another diabolical child to the tour. How do they behave? What happens to them? It's great fun. And you can also do a book or a film review and post them to social media. This is so much fun. Kids and adults can see their reviews going live and being read by other people. I mean, it's so motivating, so much fun to do. And you can give them stars, and you can sort of say what's fabulous about it, whether they'd recommend it. So that's a little run through some ideas for using authentic materials in the classroom. Next time on Friday, we are assessing our students, I believe. So we're going to have a little look at the Common European Framework, so the A0 to C2. We're going to have a little look at how we can work out where our students are on that framework, and also keeping an eye on them in terms of progress and just sort of seeing how they're doing, and different ways that we can assess them that don't involve just giving them a test every time. So here's a test, here's a test. Okay, so lots of different ways that we can assess our students. So that's on Friday. YouTube is a great source of movie trailers. Simon, I am so in agreement with you. Absolutely, movie trailers can be great. And it also, you can do things like, well, what looks interesting about the film? You know, would you like to see it? And then you can actually show it if everybody says yes. A film in English would be okay to put English subtitles on. Actually, yes, Safia. The only thing is, if you put the subtitles on, then it turns more into a reading activity. Because I don't know if you've tried this, even as a sort of a proficient speaker of a language, as soon as the subtitles go on, my eyes are drawn to the subtitles. So just sort of think about whether that's okay. So if you're using it as a reward in class, by all means put the subtitles on, it's fine. If, however, you want them to do a listening activity and you're just playing a short excerpt, then you might want to take the subtitles off because you actually want them to practice their listening. So just think about the purpose of your lesson. So Friday is 10 o'clock, yes, as per Simon. Oh, TED Talk given, yes, on the position of like in a sentence. I don't know if you've seen the Miriam Margolyes Graham Norton interview with will.i.am and her take on like. That is hilarious as well. I love it. Yes, there's some brilliant TED Talks out there, absolutely fabulous. Used judiciously though, because some of the topics can be quite sort of adult or possibly even controversial in some countries. So just be aware, and you know, like everything, don't overuse them. You know, use them sort of sparingly as you go through your classes. And as always, does anybody have any questions? You've all gone very quiet. Okay, I'm going to assume then, which is never a good thing, is it? I'm going to assume that everybody is okay and nobody has any questions. But do remember, if you do, there is the opportunity next Wednesday in our last session, in session number 10, to ask any questions that perhaps have been building up, or that when you sort of had a think back over the sessions or had a look through the materials online that you want to ask, thinking about any questions to do with travelling overseas or for working. And remember as well that with EFL, you don't have to travel. You can do EFL in the United Kingdom without moving. In fact, you can do EFL from the comfort of your own living room. So have a think about questions that that you'd like to ask next week, and I'm really happy to try and put your minds at rest about whatever's going around your head. Okay, so thank you once again, everybody, for tuning in today. It's so lovely to have you all on the call. Thank you all for your lovely comments, feedback, questions, contributions. I look forward to seeing you on Friday, and in the meantime, have a super day and go and enjoy the sunshine. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye for now.